Mr. Brock, we'll start our 5-minute rounds. Go ahead, Mr. Brock, please.
Mr. Clark, although you have not been sworn or affirmed to tell the truth, every witness that testifies at parliamentary committee is expected to tell the truth. Have you, sir, told the truth to the committee so far?
I have, every word of it.
I have a package of emails from the government, emails from the Chief of Staff to the Assistant Deputy Minister of Trudeau's Minister of Global Affairs, Melanie Jolie. She wrote a summary of the $9 million condo purchase. The email states, and I quote, "Both the Consul General of New York and the head of mission," that's you, Tom Clark, "have been instrumental throughout the process with the head of mission," again, you, Mr. Clark, "providing the green light for the selection of the new residents. It is in writing by the department. Tom Clark, you, sir, was instrumental in the condo purchase on Billionaires Row." So again, Mr. Clark, when did you raise the need for a new residence with the Liberal government?
Mr. Chair, I will repeat, I had no role whatsoever in deciding to sell the old residence, buying the new residence, or its amenities, or its location. That email that you're referring to has a couple of addendums to it that I think are important. Number one, it was corrected. That was a person who was not involved in the process of this. I only became aware of this email less than 48 hours ago. I, too, was taken aback by what was in it because it was simply wrong. It wasn't true.
Mr. Clark, let me stop you right there. I don't believe you. Canadians don't believe you. Are you trying to suggest that a head of mission in any country in the world would be completely shut out, would be completely uninvolved with the acquisition of your own residence? No Canadian believes you, sir. This was not a typo. This was a deliberate, focused sentence regarding your involvement. And the timing, sir, is crucial. The email I referenced was sent out June 17th, 2024. The story of the $9 million condo on Billionaires Row became known to the Canadian public on July the 11th. That was a huge embarrassment to the Canadian government, and I'm sure a huge embarrassment to you, Mr. Clark. Your involvement was documented well before. We have the receipts. The department's pathetic attempt to cover up for you was issued on July 25, after all of the controversy, after all of the pushback from politicians, from Canadians who are struggling to put a roof over their head, who are lined up at food banks, who are starving. People who go to the food banks were actually, donating to the food banks. And you're sitting on Billionaires Row, sipping coffee from a $6,000 coffee machine. You can appreciate how appalling that is to Canadians. So again, sir, I ask for honesty. When did you bring up the need for a new residence?
Mr. Chair, I will repeat once again, and please, if you wish, you can put me under oath on this. I had nothing to do with the decision to sell the old OR. I had nothing to do with the decision to buy the new OR. I had nothing to do with deciding on amenities or its location.
It's funny, Mr. Clark, 19 previous Consul Generals to New York since 1961 have all enjoyed the lavish amenities, the wonderful location in Midtown Manhattan of the Park Avenue residence until you, sir, were appointed to the position. And within months, sir, of you appointing the position, and within months of Justin Trudeau visiting you and you hanging out in a motorcade in downtown New York with streets closed, all of a sudden there's a talk about a new residence and a push to get you into Billionaires Row. You said at the outset you'd rather be in Central Park. Now you're overlooking Central Park. You got your wish, sir.
Mr. Brock, I am not overlooking Central Park.
Okay.
I am
I'm
not
sorry,
in
Mr.
a
Clark.
tower.
I have to interrupt. That is our time, but I think you'll probably have a chance to respond for our next intervention, Mr. Baines. I'm going to assume you are in beautiful British Columbia, at least. Go ahead, sir.
Yes, I am. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. Clark, for joining us today, and for thank you for your service. As you know, Richmond, British Columbia is a border community and a hub for goods and travel across North America and to the Asia Pacific. The efficiency of flow of goods and services, it's something that's critical to the growth of not only our city, but the wider BC economy and the Canadian economy. How does your mission in New York facilitate trade relations between Canada and the United States? We also share a coastline, so clean waterways come to top of mind, and those kinds of conversations and dialogues that need to happen. How involved are you in those conversations and the work that needs to be done there? And if you want to clarify before you get to your answer on that, about the communique that was passed along, which you said there were several amendments to that were incorrect. Maybe clarify that, and then you can, if you will, please get to my question.
Sure. And thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to make it very clear, because I think we need to have facts on the table here. This new residence does not overlook Central Park. It is on the 11th floor. It overlooks West 57th Street in New York City. In terms of that email, as I said, I was only made aware of this less than 48 hours ago, taken aback, clearly didn't represent anything that was going on. In that package that you have, there is an explanation from Global Affairs Canada as to why that was incorrect and why that was publicly corrected. But the testimony of GAC officials and of myself stands without question that I was not involved in any part of the process. Getting to the core of your question of what we do, I'd just like to point out that in the way we facilitate trade is not just sitting in New York City and talk to people here, although that's a very important part of what we do. It is also getting out into our territories, going into the small towns, talking to the local chambers of commerce, talking to people on the streets in coffee shops and letting them know who we are and finding out what they're thinking about. Since I arrived here, I've conducted 14 such outreach visits throughout my territory, resulting in 70 different meetings. I can tell you where they all were, but also I've gone to Washington, D.C. a number of times, again, to speak to federal members who are in Washington who represent the area that I am responsible for. So when I talk about facilitating trade, it is both in terms of trying to find for Canadian companies and try to facilitate for Canadian companies to find those investors here in New York who may be able to help them either expand in the United States or expand in Canada, creating jobs for Canadians. And similarly, we deal with Americans who want to send money to Canada to build plants to create jobs for Canadians. And that's essentially, that is the core of what we're trying to do. We are trying to increase not only the trade, but to put it another way, increase the wealth for Canadians, increase the number of jobs for Canadians, because after all, nothing in the end is more important than that.
Thank you for that. And I'll continue on that line of questioning, and I assure you I won't bully or intimidate like my members across the way who seem to be inspired by the recent American presidential debate and wanting to fire people. Can you speak to your plans going into the fall and the new year for growing Canada's business footprint in the United States?
Yeah, absolutely. We've got a couple of things coming up that we're extraordinarily proud of. Last year, we started our first conference on critical minerals here in New York. What we did is we invited down junior miners from Canada, people who have got known deposits of critical minerals, and we brought them together with investors here in the United States to see if we could make a match. I'm pleased to say that, in most business dealings, as anybody involved in business will tell you, it doesn't happen overnight. This is a process. Investment is a process. And along the lines, we're there to try and accelerate that, to try and widen the opportunities for those investments to be made. But at that conference on critical minerals last year, right there, I think there were 1 or 2 investment deals made. We're looking for patient capital here in New York. Patient capital is important for critical minerals, and that's important for us. And then going ahead, we have a number of what we call CTAs. Climate tech accelerators is a very big one for us, bringing down Canadian technology, looking for investors in the energy transition mode. We do this for a whole range of industries, but climate tech is a very big one coming up in Climate Week here in New York later this month, as a matter of fact.
Thank you,
Looking
gentlemen.
forward to that. Thank you.
Thanks, gentlemen. That is our time. Mrs. Vignola, please, for 2.5.